I just bought this '06 Touareg for $1,300, and as you can see, it's a giant pile of garbage. Now, I didn't buy this with any intention of fixing it. I bought this Touareg because it comes with a 3.2-liter VR6. I'm also gonna grab the brakes because it's a super common upgrade for the R32. Now, the guy I bought it from said the transmission was completely smoked. So I think it's gonna be a good idea to take it on a test drive and see what it does. And big thanks to WD-40 brand for partnering with us on this video. More about that when we get into the teardown. So I've only driven this thing up onto the trailer, and it drove on the trailer, so we're gonna just take it for a cruise. Oh God, ew, ew. It rides terrible because it's been sitting for Lord knows how long. Last thing I want is for this transmission to actually be like, okay. Then I might have a little bit of guilt pulling the VR out of it. It sounds bad. I don't know if that's the transmission making that noise or what. Oh yes, there it goes. Haha, yeah. All right, the one dude on the planet excited for transmission sadness. There it goes. There, oh yeah, oh yeah. All right, I think we've confirmed that we got some sad transmission action happening. All right, so clearly that is one sad transmission. We're gonna pull the engine, we're gonna pull the brakes, and who knows, maybe we'll find something extra cool. In addition to pulling all of the goodies out of this Touareg, we're also gonna tally up how much money we can get back from things like scrapping the car and selling the cats. So be sure to let me know in the comments what you think we're gonna get back on this Touareg. And before we pull anything, I'm gonna disconnect the battery, which the Touareg lives underneath the driver's seat. This is actually a battery I had to install because, well, watch for yourself. Does that really say 0.8 volts? Jeez. Oh, it's so dead. Okay, enough screwing around with that super dead battery. I have this Freshy Optima. On a plus note, we'll just take it back out and keep it. There we go. Also, I have some sort of goo on my arm, and that's really gross. Under-seat goo is the worst kind of goo. Yes. All right. Listen to that VR purr. And that is the whole reason I bought this car. Ugh. Get off me. There we go. This is a big boy, the big boy Optima. Something I do want to show you. Whenever you guys do something like this with a swap or a parts car, this is the kind of stuff you want to pay attention to. With the battery is all these fuses and electronicals and all that. We're gonna keep all of that, keep the ends of the wires, including this little guy, which is a pyrotechnic disconnect for the battery for when the airbags go off. We may need that in the future. Next, we're gonna take the wheels off and check it out. They even left the wheel lock. There we go. We're gonna keep these babies. We'll clean them up and make them look fresh because they don't look very fresh right now. Also, someone didn't put this pin in the right way. It's not supposed to stick out like that. Now, even though we're not gonna be really putting any of this back together on this car, I'm trying to stay organized because a lot of this kind of stuff applies to other cars, so you know exactly where it came from. This powertrain, engine, transmission, is all meant to come down as one unit, still bolted to the subframe, which is this piece right here. In order to do that, you need the giant VW table, which I don't have, so I'm just noodling how I want to take all this stuff out. Separate, together, top, bottom, front, who knows? You have to stick around to watch and find out. But before we do that, let's drain some fluids. In order to drain the coolant, I'm gonna remove this lower radiator hose. But to make life way easier, I'm gonna use some WD-40 brand Specialist silicone, and that's gonna help release the clip easier, as well as pull the hose off the radiator. Just spritzing everything here. There we go. That's a big fan shroud. Ugh. Try and make my life as easy as possible. I guess if I was doing that, I wouldn't be working on a 20-year-old Volkswagen. It's a little premature. Ooh, yeah, look at that gush. Next up, I got a bunch of stuff under the hood, under the cowl, and on the bottom to disconnect so that we could take our engine and basically our whole powertrain out of the car. Then after I do that, we'll be able to find all the things that I forgot to get that break when we're taking the engine out. There we go. Oh, is that an alive tiny frog? It is an alive tiny frog. Look at him down there. Maybe we should get him out of there. Don't get brake fluid on you, friend. That's some nasty business. Whoop. Oh no, where'd he go? Poor little guy. Probably scared the crap out of him. Now that I got pretty much everything disconnected up top, it's time to lift the car up and do the same thing underneath. Now we get to take the prop shaft out. There we go. Just needed a little extra love. One prop shaft. Ta-da! Next, I'm gonna cut the exhaust off. The rest of the exhaust will just stay with the car. We'll just have this loose so we can move it around. I also need to disconnect the steering column from the steering rack before we drop that whole thing, because the steering rack is gonna stay with the subframe. Luckily, that's just one bolt, and it's easy to get to. Now, in order to be extra super safe, I'm going to ratchet strap the Touareg to the lift, mostly because when we unbolt the engine, transmission, and center carrier, it's a lot of weight that's coming out of the front of the car. So to prevent the whole car from going bonk and falling off the lift, we're gonna do this. This is actually by the repair manual. Honestly, especially on the VR, it's probably overkill, but I'd rather overkill than get mushed by a Touareg. Now, I'm gonna take the whole powertrain out, very similar to how we would do it at the dealership. However, I don't have that like $10,000 electric table to do it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to set the car down on jack stands here and here, probably here and here, and then here and here. I'll lower it down on the jack stands, we'll unbolt all the subframe bolts as well as the suspension, and then we'll raise the car up. Now, because I'm shifting the weight of the car so heavy, I'm also gonna take a jack stand and I'm gonna put it right here on the trailer hitch. That might be a little bit of an overkill, but you know, that's okay. We're gonna be super safe. Now I'm gonna lower the car down and rest the subframe on the jack stands. And that will hopefully support the entire weight of the powertrain. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take loose the suspension in the front. 3 bolts up top. 1, 2, I feels it, but I can't seize it. There we go. Now we gotta take some bolts out. Look at that drippage. All right, this is our last subframe bolt. Hopefully I did it right. Okay, well, the fact that nothing happened, I consider that a victory. Now that we have all the subframe bolts out, I'm gonna do one more check, and we're gonna raise the car up, and the engine should stay right here on the ground. Okay, not worried yet. Ooh, did I forget to unbolt something? I forgot some bolts. Whoops. That's good. That's okay. Hey, we did it! That is what a Touareg powertrain looks like. Well, as you can see, our engine, transmission, and transfer case, which is this bad boy right here, are all out with minimal breakage, so I call that a super victory. My next step is going to be separating the transfer case from the transmission. Haha! That was actually a lot easier than I had expected it to be. We'll take this, we'll drop this thing, we'll just drop this on here. It almost said right to the floor. Next, I'll unbolt the engine mounts. Look at that. She's a-liftin'. I think I got it. All right, that did it. Look at that mess we're making. Of course, I get the tray and then it's immediately empty. Rip this baby over here. How am I looking? Good. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna lower this down on this little rolly. Basically use that to store the engine while I figure out what the heck I'm gonna do with it. Now, in proper VW fashion, the driver's side engine mount is thoroughly engineered. Not only does it have the oil filter built into it, it also holds the engine oil cooler and the engine oil pressure switch, which means engine oil actually flows through the engine mount. If you know of a crazier engine mount setup, drop that down in the comments, because this one is pretty wild. Also, our engine speed sensor is like through the middle of this, which is a real dumb place for it. Now, I'm not gonna keep these catalytic converters. Typically, cats can be pretty good money. I don't think the VR ones are like you're gonna retire off of. We'll sell them to the scrap guy, maybe get $100 or something like that. More importantly though, we got it out of the way so we can get our starter out. Oh yeah, I think that's the other bolt. Starter might be another piece that like has a little bit of value. Of course, that's immediately after I said I'd never replaced one, so maybe not. Next up, I'm gonna rotate the engine around so that we can get to all the torque converter bolts and take those out. Our engine is secured, ratchet straps down. I got one more trans bolt to take out. Now I don't have a another rolly guy for this transmission, so maybe I got another bolt that I just didn't see. That was in fact the last one. Now what we'll do is we'll just woggle this transmission on back. Looks like our torque converter stayed behind. Let's get this off of here so we don't puke fluid all over the place. Okay, we have our transmission separated. That exposes our flex plate, which is this piece right here. This ring is also where our starter engages to start our car. Behind this is our timing chains. Remember, the VRs have the timing chain on the back side of the engine. So if you need to do timing chains on your Touareg, you can pull the whole thing out like we did, or you could just do the transmission and then do the chains with the engine in the car. It's a lot of work either way, so kind of pick your poison. The other really important thing to point out, if you're pulling one of these engines for a swap in something like a Mark IV, you need to know one really important key difference. Right here on this engine are these flats. Even though it's a similar engine as the R32 has, it is different. One of the key things being right here on the R32, they're drilled and tapped because this is where your engine mount would go in the transverse engine. This one is longitudinal in the Touareg, which means the front here faces the front of the vehicle. In the R32, the front here faces the passenger side, and this is where your engine mount mounts up. So if you're gonna use this in a Mark IV swap, or a swap that would put an engine mount here, you're gonna need to have these drilled and tapped for bolt holes. If you swap it into something like a Mark III though, a lot of the kits have it mounted from the backside, and then you don't really have to worry about it, which has me thinking maybe this is a good swap for that red Mark III Cabrio that I had a while back, but who knows? There are also a handful of these accessories that aren't gonna drop right in to another swap. So you may still have to find things like an engine room harness, exhaust manifolds, coolant lines, and all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, I'm gonna take some saran wrap, wrap this baby up, and we're going to save it for another time. This is probably also a good time to talk about pricing. Remember, I paid $1,300 for this whole vehicle. The best I could find was a stripped down version of this engine on eBay for like $1,600. That's why I'm always keeping my eye open for stuff like this. You might end up being able to get a car, get the parts you need, sell those, and make a good amount of money. One of the other key things that we're gonna snag off of this Touareg is going to be the front calipers and the rear calipers. This is a really great upgrade for Mark IV R32. I don't know exactly the parts I need. I know we're not gonna keep this rotor because it's crusty, but I am gonna take the dust shield off on the back. The first thing we'll do is take this bolt that holds the rotor loose. There we go. I put this screwdriver in here to hold the rotor, otherwise this is just gonna turn. Now on the back side, I'm gonna take the line, this flexible line, these two brackets, and the hard line off. Worst case, we'll end up using it on a different project or just scrapping it. Might have to rock it a bit, and we can take this whole unit up and over to our bench. So this is the caliper we just took off from the Touareg. It's a 6-piston caliper, which means there's 3 pistons on this side and 3 pistons on this side, all of which push the brake pads into the rotors, which slows down the car. For comparison, that's the one that comes out of the R32 from the factory. It's a 2-piston caliper, and it feels quite a bit heavier, actually. I don't have a scale that can weigh these because they weigh more than my little scale will weigh. That's a pretty great upgrade for the front brakes. Now, in an effort to deal with some of this chaos that we have going on, I'm actually gonna lower the Touareg down and bolt the subframe back up. What should happen is I just lower the Touareg down and it should line up almost exactly where it needs to be. Oftentimes there's a little bit of fiddle-faddling that you're gonna have to do to get it to bolt back up, but it's usually not too bad. Be really careful here because if you're running these bolts back in, you're going into the body of the car, you do not want to cross-thread one of these. Don't send them home if you're not 100% sure that they're threaded in right. All right, we're gonna do the same thing pretty much for the back brakes that we did for the front. Also another Mark IV R32 upgrade. There's a kit that my buddy Joel sent me. I'll try and link it up for you, where you install this as like the hydraulic brake on the rear of the R32, and then use your factory R32 rear caliper as the parking brake. The Touareg, fun fact, has a drum-in-hat parking brake for the rears, which means that inside of this piece here is actually the parking brake. The newer ones, the T3s, have an electronic parking brake. This used to be a really expensive upgrade for a Mark IV R32, where you would pay like 600 bucks just for the front calipers. The prices have come down a significant amount, where you can pretty much get all 4 calipers for like 400 bucks. So a handful of years ago, this would have been knocking it out of the park as far as getting a deal. Today, it's not quite as much, but I think we're still gonna come out ahead. Okay, one of the final things that I want to do under the hood is get as much of this wiring harness as I possibly can. A couple of reasons. One, we want as much to make their swap as easy as possible, but two, this Touareg actually has a lot of these big connectors that have a male and female side. So these are going to be handy for other wiring harnesses that we build in the future, and it's going to go to scrap anyway, so we might as well take all the connector ends and pigtails and good stuff as we can. Okay, we got pretty much everything we need to do with the car on the lift, so I'm gonna roll it back just enough to open the door, and we're gonna work on getting those inside parts next. I'm going to try anyway. There we go, there we go. I'm gonna try and take some of this. So we're gonna take the positive and negative cable, which are these two. We'll take some connectors for the seat, but this is the piece that I want more than anything. In order to get that out, we got to take some more of this interior trim off. I'm more worried about gross things hitting me in the face. Oh, but I found a clean dime, so. Oh yeah. Kind of wish I wouldn't have cut the other side of it. After a pile of tools and a whole bunch of finagling, I have this part of the harness. Oh, that's stuck. The fuse panel, this guy, this was kind of my main goal. And also, look at this. This is stuff that lived under the hood. So look at this monster of a harness I cut. Let's hope that we don't end up needing anything that goes further. This part ran back behind the dash, but we got instrument cluster connectors, the ignition switch. I didn't really plan to take all this out like this. I'm gonna be very honest, but I did. The only thing I think I got left to do is load this thing up with all the junk we took out, and then we call the scrap guy and get it the heck out of here. Here's a pile of gross change that I found. So I guess we can make some money that way too. I also have the DSG from the S4 from back when we did the manual swap. So I'm gonna drag that down here too, put it in here. That's gonna pad my scrap dollars a little bit, but more importantly, get that thing out of my life. This will be good. Yeah, that's what I was worried was gonna happen. Here's how to properly make your Touareg Carolina squat. I think that's good. We still got a few more things to fit, but the DSG alone should overcome not having the engine in there, because 100% this thing weighs more than that VR6 does. Now we can drag this thing out of here with some Touareg on Touareg action to get it ready for scrap. Now before the scrap guy came, I pulled the headlights out for a buddy of mine. So here's the price breakdown that we have. I got $240 for the catalytic converters. The headlights that I pulled for my buddy, I got $100 for. And the total scrap price for the Touareg was $510. This means for 450 bucks, we got a brake upgrade for the R32, the engine harness and countless connectors, a pretty fun transmission teardown video, a bunch of odds and ends for my Touareg, and a really good running 3.2 liter VR6 with the ECM and wiring for a future swap. Now it's important to note, had I parted this Touareg out piece by piece, I could have done way better and made back a bunch more of my money. But I really think that for 450 bucks, getting the engine, the brakes, and a bunch of other stuff, we did really, really good. So I'm gonna wrap it up there. Questions or comments, drop them down below. With that, I'm out. Have an awesome day, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.